Welcome to another episode of Basey Brings Cubs. Right now, our main talking point is, are the Cubs in trouble? Should we be worried about this team right now? While the record doesn't really show that, they're still 31-27, 4 games over 500. Their pitching injuries and hitting woes have really been a concern for me. Starting off with their pitching, the Cubs' pitching rotation right now is so battered that I don't know how you win games still. Going into the season, you're assuming all of your pitchers, including Justin Steele, are healthy. Your rotation would feature Shota Imanaga, Cade Horton, Justin Steele, Matthew Boyd, and Edward Cabrera. That's a pretty good rotation, and you're probably winning 4 out of 5 with that. At least 3 games. But now your starting rotation is so battered that it's now Jordan Wicks, Shota, Ben Brown, who's somehow now their ace, J-Mo, and Colin Ray. Out of those 5, 3 of them were not starting to start off the year. 3 of them should not be in the rotation. Jordan Wicks showed that after he gave up an abysmal 4-inning, 8-run performance against the Pirates. Now, Ben Brown has really stepped up in his role and become the team ace somehow. And Colin Ray has actually been pretty solid, but you just can't win ball games with a rotation like that. Not too many of them, at least. And you certainly cannot expect to go far in the playoffs with a rotation like that. Now, the Cubs' injuries will get better, as Matthew Boyd should be back in about 2 weeks, and Justin Steele can hopefully be back in time for the playoffs. Edward Cabrera should also be back by sometime in June. So it can get better. However, these injuries, as of right now, are going to be a short-term big problem for the Cubs. We saw that last night against the Cardinals in a 5-6 loss against the Dirty Birds. It started off great with an Ian Happ 3-run home run in the top of the first, as he's continued his hot streak. It's very weird, as he had been the team's coldest hitter and one of the league's coldest hitters, and now one of the league's hottest. However, then the Cubs could not hold that lead for long, as Shota Imanaga gave up a 3-run home run to former Cub Nelson Velasquez to make it a tie game, 3-3. Michael Busch put the Cubs back up ahead, but 2 more home runs got Imanaga pulled and the Cubs down by 1. Cardinals then tacked on another run in the 8th. Michael Busch got a RBI ground out. However, that was not enough, and the Cubs lost 5-6. There were multiple factors that may have the Cubs losing this game here. The first was the managing. Craig Counsell did a bad job last night. I actually like Craig Counsell as a manager, but this was one of his worst nights I've seen from him. Shota Imanaga should have been pulled after that second home run. Had he done that, it would have likely remained a tie game. However, because he left Imanaga in too long, he paid a price and gave up at least 1 home run. However, on the other side, Oliver Marmol pulled his starter early when he saw he was struggling. I don't know how Ollie Marmol outmanages Craig Counsell, but they found a way to do it. And then Craig Counsell's other huge mistake was in the bottom of the 8th in a 1-run game, putting in Phil Maton in the bottom of the 8th. I have not been happy with Phil Maton to start this year. After the Cubs signed him to a massive reliever contract for Cubs standards, he's been a massive disappointment so far. And if the Cubs weren't paying him so much, I'd want them to cut him. Maybe they could trade him for something. Just cash, almost. But putting in Phil Maton in the 8th, had he put in an actually competent reliever, that would have allowed the Cubs to tie up the game in the 9th instead of making it just a 1-run game. We would have gone to the bottom of the 9th and possibly extras. Because of that, I feel like those were the 2 main things. The second was Shota Imanaga's abysmal start. In 5.1 innings pitched, he gave up 5 hits, 5 runs, only 2 strikeouts and 1 walk. That's a bad night for Imanaga, who's continued to struggle in this stretch so far. It's very weird because he was clearly the team's ace heading into May, but heading out of May, he's honestly might be the team's worst. It's very odd to see, but hopefully he can turn it up a bit because the Cubs are going to need him to step it up if they want him to pitch at all in the playoffs. Should the Cubs even make the playoffs with these pitching injuries? So because of those things, there's some problems with the Cubs here. They're now third in the NL Central, trailing behind St. Louis and the Brewers. And they're in front of Cincinnati and the Pirates. After the Cubs had some serious momentum coming off 2 great wins against the Pirates at Pittsburgh, this was just disappointing to see. Just disappointing to see. So, see if they can do a little better tonight. So it'll be another game at 6:15 p.m. Cubs-Cardinals. Here's our little pregame. It'll be Ben Brown, the team ace, versus Kyle Leahy. Ben Brown has really impressed me so far as he stepped into the starting role. He's really been forced into the starting role. After he added that true third pitch, his sinker, hitters have not been able to hit well off of him. He was doing great in the pen, but then after Matthew Boyd's injury, Brown was forced to be a starter. And in that role, he's done just as well, if not better. Right now, he has a 2.01 ERA with a whip of 0.99. It's not even $1. 44.2 innings pitched. He's only given up 30 hits, but 47 Ks. He averages more than 1 strikeout per inning, and hitters just continuously whiff off Ben Brown. I also love his competitive spirit. In that blowout game against the Pirates, he was still invested in the game, treating it very seriously. That kind of dedication is something I want to see from more of these Cubs players. It really impressed me and made me like Ben Brown a lot more. So yes, Kyle Leahy, meanwhile, has struggled so far. He has a 4.44 ERA, a 1.58 whip. If you don't know what that is, that means walks plus hits per innings pitched. Basically, how many base runners do you allow per inning? Innings pitched, he's thrown 50.2 and have given up 58 hits, meaning he averages at least 1 hit per inning. He's also only K'd 42, which is 5 less than Ben Brown, despite the fact he's pitched 6 more innings. And he's also walked a lot more than Ben Brown with 22 and given up 8 home runs. This is a game that the Cubs have to win if they want to get this series back on track. All will be forgiven if they can do that. So anyway, there's our problems, but there's also a good game to look ahead to tonight. That's all for today. I hope that you have a good one and enjoy watching the game tonight. It's Basey signing out.